I spent 7 grueling months in a classified military deployment, counting down the seconds until I could hold my family again. But when I finally stepped onto my front porch just 2 days before Christmas, the warm homecoming I'd imagined instantly shattered. My 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was standing at the front door, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. Her tiny, fragile hands were trembling violently as she blocked the doorway. I reached out to pull her into a hug, but she took a panicked step backward, looked up at me with absolute terror in her eyes, and whispered, "Daddy said, if I let you in, she'll hurt me again." A freezing chill instantly swept through my veins. Before I could even process her words, I heard the faint sound of footsteps and a strange woman's voice calling out from deep inside my dark house. "My name is Major Rachel Vance. I am 34 years old, and until 2 days before Christmas, my entire world revolved around serving my country in highly sensitive classified intelligence missions. I had just spent 7 grueling months deployed overseas, enduring sleepless nights and hostile territory, with only one thought keeping me anchored: getting back to my husband, David, and our beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Lily. But the warm, festive homecoming I had envisioned for months instantly shattered the moment I stepped onto my front porch. The Christmas lights were twinkling, but the heavy oak door opened to reveal a scene of absolute terror. My little girl was standing there, blocking the entryway. She was crying so violently that she could barely catch her breath, her tiny, fragile hands trembling as she held them up to keep me away. When I reached out to pull her into my arms, she took a panicked step backward into the shadows of the foyer. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a profound dread that no child should ever know, and whispered, "Daddy said, if I let you in, she'll hurt me again." Before I tell you what I found behind that door, please follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. A freezing chill instantly swept through my veins. As a shadow suddenly moved across the far wall of the hallway, I pushed past the threshold, ready to face whatever nightmare had taken over my home. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the winter air but trapping me in an atmosphere that felt suffocatingly tense. The familiar scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air, but the eerie silence hanging over the living room told me everything was wrong. I took 3 cautious steps forward, my hand instinctively dropping to my side as if searching for my military sidearm. There, sitting casually on my plush velvet sofa, was a woman I had never seen before in my life. She was striking, expensively maintained, and completely at ease. So much so that she was wearing my favorite cream-colored cashmere sweater. She held a wine glass in her hand, swirling the dark red liquid with an air of supreme ownership. Before I could demand to know who she was, the heavy footsteps of my husband David echoed from the kitchen doorway. He froze when he saw me, his eyes widening in brief shock, but the surprise vanished faster than a breath on a cold window. He didn't rush to hug me. He didn't welcome me home. Instead, he smoothly walked over to the sofa, resting a possessive hand on the unknown woman's shoulder. "Rachel," David said, his voice entirely stripped of the warmth we had shared for 7 years. "You're early. This is Vanessa. She's my new partner, and she's running things around here now." I stood frozen as the sheer weight of his betrayal hit me like a physical blow. When I furiously demanded to know why my daughter was terrified on the porch, David just laughed coldly. "Lily is just confused and making up stories," he said smoothly, gaslighting me without a shred of guilt. "The stress of your deployment has clearly made her unstable." Biting back the explosive rage threatening to break my military composure, I forced my focus onto the only thing that mattered: my daughter. I bypassed David and Vanessa entirely, scooping Lily up into my arms and carrying her down the hallway to her playroom. She buried her tear-stained face into my neck, her small frame still shaking. I gently set her down on the carpet, kneeling so we were eye to eye. "Look at me, Lily," I whispered, keeping my voice fiercely steady. "Mommy is home now. Nobody is ever going to hurt you again, I promise." Lily didn't speak. Instead, she pointed a trembling finger toward the top shelf where her favorite large teddy bear sat. My intelligence training instantly kicked in. I reached up, grabbed the bear, and felt a hard, square object hidden inside its plush chest. Tucked beneath the synthetic fur was a lens, a hidden, active nanny cam. David had installed it to monitor her, but he had underestimated my technical capabilities. Pulling out my military-grade phone, I bypassed the camera's encryption protocol and instantly downloaded the local storage logs. As the video data populated my screen, I watched the raw footage in absolute horror. The camera captured everything. It showed Vanessa aggressively yanking Lily by the arm, and worse, it showed David looming over our terrified 4-year-old. His recorded voice was venomous as he threatened her, saying, "If you ever tell your mother what happens in this house, bad things will happen to you." The evidence was undeniable, and the trap was set. A dangerous, cold clarity settled over me as I tucked the encrypted phone safely into my pocket. In the military, throwing a punch when you are ambushed only gets you killed. You survive by stepping back, assessing the terrain, and building a devastating counter-strategy. I swallowed my fury, walked back into the living room, and looked at David and Vanessa with a perfectly hollow, defeated expression. "You're right," I said, letting my voice crack slightly to play the part of the broken wife. "I'm exhausted from the deployment and I clearly need space to think. Lily and I will pack a bag and stay at the base hotel tonight." David's chest swelled with arrogant victory. He smirked at Vanessa, completely convinced that his intimidation tactics had worked flawlessly. While they retreated to the kitchen to pour another celebratory drink, I moved with silent, lethal precision through the house. I slipped into David's home office under the pretense of gathering my personal belongings. Within 4 minutes, my hands found exactly what I was looking for. I extracted key financial documents, private legal records, and the secondary external backup drives hidden in his desk. They had no idea I was stripping them of every digital hiding place they had. I walked back down the hallway, wrapped Lily in her thick winter coat, and carried her out to my car. As I pulled out of the driveway into the freezing night, I glanced back at the house. David thought he had won. He had no idea the battle hadn't even begun. We checked into the secure military base hotel, a sanctuary of concrete and armed checkpoints where David couldn't possibly reach us. Once Lily was safely asleep under the warm blankets, I sat at the small desk and immediately activated my professional network. I bypassed civilian channels entirely, placing an urgent call to Captain Miller, a fierce, high-profile military legal advocate, and Detective Sarah Jenkins, a trusted childhood friend, who now headed the local domestic crimes task force. Within an hour, they were reviewing the encrypted data I had successfully extracted from the house. What we uncovered in those digital documents went far deeper than a simple extramarital affair. Sarah ran Vanessa's prints and aliases through the federal database, revealing that my husband's new partner was actually a sophisticated con artist with a lengthy, active history of interstate financial fraud. Even worse, the secondary backup drives from David's office exposed the full extent of his betrayal. While I was deployed overseas risking my life, David had systematically forged my signature on multiple legal documents, completely draining my hard-earned deployment savings to fund their lavish lifestyle and expensive cars. "We can arrest him right now for the fraud," Sarah said over the secure line, her voice sharp with anger. But I knew a standard arrest would allow them to hide behind expensive lawyers. I wanted them caught completely red-handed with no way out. Together, we meticulously coordinated a devastating multi-agency surprise intervention, setting the trap to spring perfectly on Christmas Eve. The grandfather clock in the entryway chimed exactly 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve as I unlocked the front door. I walked into the living room with an absolute, unbothered calm, carrying a sleek manila folder. David and Vanessa were waiting for me, sitting side by side on the velvet sofa like a king and queen ready to claim their prize. David looked at me with a patronizing smirk, completely convinced that he had successfully broken my spirit. "I'm glad you're being reasonable, Rachel," David said, sliding a thick stack of property transfer deeds across the mahogany coffee table toward me. "Signing these houses over to us is the best thing for everyone. It ensures Lily is taken care of without a messy public court battle." Vanessa offered a sickening, synthetic smile, her eyes gleaming with greed as she pushed a heavy gold pen into my hand. I picked up the pen, turning it over in my fingers, playing the part of the defeated widow until the very last second. "You're right," I whispered, leaning down toward the paper. "We should definitely ensure everyone gets exactly what they deserve." But before the tip of the pen could touch the paper, the front door was violently breached. The sudden, deafening command of, "Police, don't move!" shattered the quiet afternoon as Detective Jenkins and a team of armed tactical officers swarmed the room. David sprang up in pure panic, his face instantly turning a ghostly shade of gray as multiple red laser sights painted his chest. "David Vance, you are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and felony child abuse," Sarah announced coldly. Vanessa tried to bolt toward the back hallway, but a female officer intercepted her, violently forcing her down onto the carpeted floor. As the heavy steel handcuffs clicked loudly into place around their wrists in front of the glittering Christmas tree, I stepped back and looked down at my husband. The arrogant facade he had worn all week completely evaporated, replaced by utter horror as he realized I had been 10 steps ahead of him the entire time. They had no way out. 3 months later, I stood on the porch of a charming, sunlit cottage in Carmel, watching the calm waves of the Pacific Ocean crash against the shore. The property was purchased entirely with cash, funded by the assets my quick action had secured, leaving me with financial security for lifetimes. The legal fallout back home was absolute. David and Vanessa were both denied bail and are currently serving extensive sentences in a federal penitentiary for fraud and child abuse. Now, I am curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you saw your child terrified at your own front door? Leave a comment below, watch the next channel favorite on your screen, and thank you for staying until the very end.